The alien war camp was alive with noise. A wide circle of soldiers sat around a burning fire, their sharp voices rising into the cold night sky. The flames danced and cracked, sending sparks into the darkness. They were strong, fearless beings, trained to conquer worlds. Their armor was dented from battle, their weapons stacked nearby, and their faces carried the proud marks of many victories. Yet tonight, they were not talking about war. They were laughing. The laughter echoed across the camp, deep and cruel. Their glowing eyes shone with amusement as one soldier stood and waved his hands dramatically. He was telling a story, but not their own. It was a human story. Listen, the soldier roared, his voice full of mockery. The humans say there is a god of thunder who throws lightning from the sky. He raised his arms as if holding an invisible hammer and shouted, "Boom!" The others exploded with laughter, slapping their knees, their long teeth showing in wide grins. Another soldier joined in, shaking his head with disbelief. And they tell of angels-winged creatures of light who fight beside them. Can you imagine? Tiny humans calling for help from shining birds. He flapped his arms clumsily like wings, stumbling around the fire as the camp roared with more laughter. The sound rolled on, cruel and unending. It was not just entertainment, it was pride. To these warriors, human myths were nothing but foolish stories told by a weak species. They mocked them the way predators mock prey. The youngest soldiers laughed the loudest. Their eyes sparkled with arrogance as they retold the myths. Humans say demons rise from fire. One shouted, "Maybe we should bring fire to their world, so their demons can crawl out and save them." Another threw a piece of wood into the fire, sparks shooting upward. "Where are your demons now, little humans?" he cried, laughing until his shoulders shook. But among all the noise, there was one soldier who did not laugh. He sat at the far edge of the circle, away from the flames. His armor was old and scarred, his face cut by lines of age and war. Unlike the others, his eyes did not shine with arrogance. They were heavy, dark, and distant. He had fought longer than most of them had lived. His name was whispered with respect, the war hero, the survivor of countless battles. Yet tonight, he was silent. The young ones noticed. "Why do you not laugh, old hero?" one shouted across the fire. "Do you not find these human fairy tales funny?" The hero's eyes lifted slowly from the flames to the group. His face did not move, but the air seemed heavier as his gaze passed over them. The laughter began to weaken, one soldier after another falling quiet. Finally, the hero spoke. His voice was low, but it cut through the night like a blade. "You laugh," he said, "because you do not know the truth." The circle went still. Even the fire seemed to soften its crackling. The younger ones frowned, confused. They looked at each other, then back at the war hero. "What truth?" one asked, forcing a laugh to hide his unease. "That humans believe their bedtime stories, that they fight with prayers instead of weapons." The hero shook his head slowly. His hand rested on the scar that ran across his chest, a mark from a battle long past. "No," he said, "the truth is this. I have seen those stories on the battlefield, and they are not as empty as you think." The silence deepened. The young soldiers leaned forward, curiosity flickering in their eyes. They had never heard him speak this way before. The war hero, who had never flinched before blade or bullet, now spoke as if carrying a weight too heavy for laughter. One of the boldest soldiers scoffed. "Are you saying the humans' gods are real?" He tried to laugh again, but it was weak, unsure. The hero's gaze did not shift. "I am saying that when you face humans, you do not fight only flesh. You fight their belief, and belief is stronger than you imagine." The fire crackled again, louder this time, as if marking the moment. Around the circle, the mood had shifted. What had begun as mockery now hung heavy with unease. The young ones exchanged glances. The laughter drained from their mouths, but curiosity still burned. The same bold soldier, his pride not yet broken, leaned forward and asked, "Then tell us, war hero, what did you see? What did you fight?" The old warrior looked into the flames, the orange glow reflecting in his scarred eyes. His jaw tightened, his silence stretching long enough to make the others restless. Finally, he said, "I will tell you, but once you hear it, you will not laugh again." The night grew colder. The stars above seemed sharper, brighter, as if they too leaned in to listen. Around the fire, the alien soldiers waited, no longer mocking, no longer proud. Suspense filled the camp like a storm about to break. The war hero drew a long breath, and his story began. The fire burned low, its glow stretching shadows across the soldiers' faces. The younger ones sat tense, no longer mocking, no longer laughing. All eyes turned toward the old war hero who had spoken. He did not rush. He stared into the flames, as if they alone could understand the memories carved deep inside him. The silence stretched until it felt like the night itself was holding its breath. He shifted slightly, the scarred metal of his armor creaking. Then his voice broke the stillness, low and steady, carrying the weight of many battles. "You call them weak," he said, his eyes not leaving the fire. "You think they are prey. But you have not stood where I stood. You have not seen what I have seen." The younger soldiers leaned forward, restless with curiosity. The boldest of them smirked, trying to hold on to his pride. "Then show us, old hero. Tell us why you stare at flames like they whisper secrets." The war hero's gaze finally lifted. His eyes, dark and scarred by time, swept over them. Every soldier who met his look felt an unease crawl across their skin, though none would admit it. "I was sent to Earth," he began, his words slow, like stones falling into a well. "Long before you were born, before your first victories. I led a battalion, proud and strong. We were told humans would fall quickly, that their weapons were crude, their hearts soft. I believed this." The soldiers around the fire listened, silent as stone. The war hero's voice carried a strange rhythm, not the tone of a story told for amusement, but of something remembered too clearly, too painfully. "Our landing was met with fire," he continued. "Humans fought harder than expected. They bled, they fell, but they did not break. Even as my soldiers crushed their defenses, the humans did not stop. It was as if they drew strength from something unseen." A young warrior snorted quietly, trying to hold on to arrogance. Perhaps they were simply desperate. Dying creatures fight hardest. The hero's eyes snapped to him, sharp as a blade. The young soldier's smirk faded at once. "No," the hero said firmly, "this was not desperation. Desperation stinks of fear. What I saw was not fear, it was defiance. And in that defiance, something else lived, something I could not name." He paused, his scarred hand closing into a fist. The flames cracked loudly, filling the silence between his words. "The first night," he said, "was when I began to understand. My battalion attacked their city. The humans were few, exhausted, yet they held their ground. They cried out names while they fought names I did not know. Gods of thunder, gods of war, angels with burning wings. They called them as if calling brothers to their side." He leaned forward, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. "And then, I felt it." The circle of soldiers stirred uneasily. One whispered, "Felt what?" The war hero's eyes narrowed, fixed on the memory. The air changed. The smoke twisted into shapes. Shadows moved where no light touched. I saw my soldiers hesitate. Some swore they heard voices that did not belong to humans or to us. My warriors, proud killers, began to falter. A chill moved across the circle. One of the younger soldiers shook his head, forcing a laugh that sounded too thin. "You claim their myths walked the battlefield." The war hero's face hardened. "I claim only what I saw. Call it trick, call it madness, but it broke us. I watched my strongest warriors look into that smoke and scream as if they faced demons themselves. They fled. I tried to hold them, but belief spread like fire. They believed the humans had spirits beside them, and once belief took them, fear did the rest." The fire crackled again, loud in the stillness. No one laughed now. The old hero's gaze returned to the flames. His voice slowed, heavy with memory. "We thought victory was ours. We thought humans were simple prey. But that night I learned this. Humans fight with more than bodies. They fight with stories, with belief, with something deeper than bone. And that is why I do not laugh at their myths." The soldiers exchanged uneasy looks. None dared mock him now. The silence pressed down like a weight. Each soldier caught between fear and disbelief. One finally whispered, his voice trembling despite himself. "Did you see them, old hero? Did you see the gods they called?" The war hero's eyes glinted in the firelight, unreadable. "I saw enough," he said. "Enough to know the battlefield held more than flesh and steel. Enough to know laughter dies quickly when the shadows answer." The words hung in the air, chilling and heavy. The younger soldiers could not find their voices. They looked at the old warrior, waiting, fearing, and yet desperate to hear more. But the hero leaned back, his scarred armor groaning softly. He drew in a slow breath, as if the next memory weighed on his chest. His eyes lifted once more to the stars, distant and cold. "You want the truth," he said finally, his voice deep as the night itself. "Then listen, for the truth does not laugh. The truth burns." The fire flickered, sparks shooting high into the dark sky. Around the circle, the silence was unbroken. The laughter from earlier was gone, swallowed by a tension so thick it clung to every breath. The war hero closed his eyes, and his story pushed deeper, dragging them all into the heart of the nightmare he had carried for years. The night had grown colder. The young soldiers no longer smiled, no longer spoke. The old war hero's words held them like chains, and none dared to break the silence. The fire hissed and spat, throwing shadows that stretched like claws across the camp. The hero's eyes stayed fixed on the flames, as if he could still see the battlefield hidden inside them. When we landed on Earth, he said slowly, I believed it would be like all the other conquests. My battalion was strong, armored in steel, armed with weapons that had burned cities to ash on other worlds. Humans had rifles, tanks, aircraft, crude things, nothing more. We expected them to fall quickly, as others had before. He paused, his scarred hand tightening around his knee. The younger ones leaned forward, their pride quiet now, their curiosity burning hotter than the fire. But when the fighting began, the hero continued. Something was different. Humans fought as if they carried more than weapons. Their lines broke, yes, but they did not scatter. Even in retreat, they stayed together. I remember a soldier, small, blood running from his chest. He fell, but he kept firing until his last breath. His eyes burned with something I could not name. He should have been afraid, but he was not. None of them were. One young soldier shifted uneasily, muttering, perhaps they were fools, too stubborn to run. The hero's gaze turned on him, sharp as a blade. No, he said, fools fight blindly. These humans fought with purpose. They fought as though they were not alone, and perhaps they were not. The circle grew tense again. The younger ones listened, unable to look away, even as unease crawled down their spines. The first encounter burned itself into me, the hero said. It was night. Smoke filled the city. We advanced, confident, our weapons tearing through their defenses. But the humans, they called out, they shouted names while they fired. Not the names of commanders, not calls for reinforcements. Names older than their cities, older than their nations. Names from their stories. Gods of war, angels of light, guardians of fire. His voice dropped, low and steady. And then the air changed. The soldiers shifted closer without realizing it. The fire cracked, sending sparks into the sky, as if echoing his words. The smoke twisted into shapes. He said, at first I thought it was a trick of the fire, a trick of my mind. But the shapes grew clearer. Some looked like wings, vast and shining. Others like shadows with eyes that burned red. My soldiers saw them too. I heard them whispering, breaking formation. They looked into the haze and swore they saw figures walking beside the humans. Figures carrying swords of light, or cloaked in flame. One of my warriors dropped his weapon and fled screaming. Another fell to his knees, covering his head like a child. The campfire popped, startling one of the younger soldiers. He forced out a laugh, thin and trembling. Illusions, smoke and fear. Humans tricked you. The war hero's stare froze him where he sat. Do you think I, who fought 100 battles, fell to a trick? Do you think soldiers who burned worlds with fire would shiver at smoke? No, it was more. I cannot explain it, but I felt it. The weight of belief pressed against me. It was as if every name they cried had power, and that power walked the battlefield. The others sat frozen, the firelight painting their faces with golden shadow. None spoke. The hero's voice, low and steady, filled the night. I led my warriors forward, forcing them to hold the line, but the humans would not break. Every time one fell, another rose. They fought as if they carried the strength of all their ancestors, as if the blood of their dead only made them stronger. My warriors began to falter. Some fired blindly into the smoke. Others wept. I could see it in their eyes. Belief had already defeated them, long before human bullets touched their skin. He looked down at his scarred hands. They trembled slightly, though his voice did not. I killed many that night, he said. Humans fell before me. But for each one I struck down, 3 more appeared. It was not numbers that crushed us. It was their spirit. It was as if the stories they carried had risen from their hearts and stood beside them. I had never feared before, but that night I felt fear. A silence heavier than stone fell over the camp. Even the fire seemed to burn more quietly, as if listening. One young soldier dared to whisper, "And what happened to your battalion?" The war hero's jaw tightened. His eyes were far away, staring into a past none of them could see. "Broken," he said at last. "Shattered. I returned alone. The rest were left in that city, consumed not by fire, not by bullets, but by belief." The younger ones swallowed hard, the taste of their earlier laughter bitter now. The oldest among them lowered his gaze, as if ashamed. None dared to mock the hero's words anymore. He leaned forward, his face lit by the fire. His voice fell to a whisper that carried across the silence. "You laugh at humans because you see flesh. But I tell you this, Their flesh is only the beginning. When they fight, they do not fight alone. They fight with all the ghosts of their past, with all the myths they believe. And when you face them, you face not one enemy, but many. The fire cracked again, sparks leaping into the night sky. The younger soldiers sat stiff, their arrogance burned away by the weight of the tale. None could laugh now, none even dared to breathe too loudly. The war hero sat back, his eyes cold, his voice gone quiet. The night closed around them, heavy with the truth he had laid before them, and though the fire still burned, the camp had never felt so dark. The fire burned lower, casting long shadows that seemed alive. The young soldiers sat rigid, their laughter forgotten. The old hero's words weighed heavy on them, pressing into their chests like an unseen hand. They had asked for truth, and now truth had begun to bleed out into the night. But the war hero was not finished. His eyes, dark and distant, stayed fixed on the flames, as if the shapes he saw there were not of wood and fire but of memory itself. He drew in a slow breath, his chest rising beneath dented armor. The battle did not end that night, he said quietly. What I told you, the smoke, the shadows, the voices, that was only the beginning. The real horror came when the shadows answered. A shiver ran through the circle. The younger ones leaned closer despite themselves. They wanted to turn away, but curiosity held them fast, sharp and merciless. The hero's voice deepened, steady but heavy with something unspoken. I remember the moment clearly. My soldiers were breaking, fear spreading like disease. Humans still fought, broken but unbent. They shouted names of gods and guardians, their voices hoarse yet filled with fire. I tried to rally my warriors, to hold them together, but then, something moved. He closed his eyes briefly, as though reliving it. From the smoke rose a figure. I swear to you, it was no human. Its form flickered between light and shadow, its shape too vast to belong to mortal flesh. For a heartbeat it looked like wings made of fire. Then it became something darker, a shadow with a crown of smoke and eyes like burning coals. My soldiers screamed. Some dropped their weapons. Others fell to their knees, praying to gods not their own. The fire hissed, throwing sparks into the night. One of the young soldiers whispered, his voice unsteady, "A trick." It must have been a trick. The hero's eyes snapped open, piercing, unyielding. You call it a trick because you were not there. You did not feel the ground tremble beneath your feet, or hear the voices whispering from nowhere. Some of my soldiers swore they heard their dead mothers calling their names. Others claimed they heard laughter, deep, endless laughter that shook their bones. Tell me, was that smoke and fear, or was it something greater? The younger ones fell silent, their faces pale in the firelight. None dared answer. The hero leaned forward, his voice dropping lower, like the growl of distant thunder. I tried to fight it. I told myself it was illusion, a weapon of fear. I raised my blade and charged. I struck the figure, and do you know what happened? The soldiers leaned closer, hearts pounding. My blade passed through it, the hero whispered. It was like cutting air, yet the air burned me. My hand blistered beneath my armor, and pain shot through my arm. I, who had fought 100 battles, staggered like a child. The figure turned its eyes to me, and in that instant I believed. Not in their gods, not in their myths, but in their power, because whatever that thing was, it was real enough to wound me. He pulled back his sleeve, revealing a scar running down his arm, twisted and pale, as if burned long ago. The soldiers stared, some with wide eyes, others with fear tightening their throats. The hero let the sleeve fall. My soldiers ran. They scattered like leaves before a storm. Some were cut down by human bullets. Others disappeared into the night, never seen again. I tried to hold the line, but the shadows pressed closer. Every cry of a human soldier seemed to summon them. Every drop of their blood seemed to feed them. The battlefield became a place of nightmares, where gods and demons walked in smoke and flame. One soldier shook his head, his voice cracking as he spoke. If what you say is true, then humans, they fight with more than weapons. They fight with their myths. The hero nodded slowly. Yes, and that is why you must not laugh at them. Myths are not chains to them. Myths are wings. They rise on them higher and higher, until even the strongest of us cannot pull them down. The circle was silent. Only the fire spoke, its crackle sharp in the heavy night. The younger ones sat still, their earlier arrogance shattered. They looked not at each other but at the hero, their faces pale, their eyes wide with the weight of what he had said. The hero's gaze swept across them, cold and final. You think stories are weakness. You think belief is foolish. But I tell you this, on Earth, belief kills. And if you ever face humans in war, you will see shadows rise to answer their call. You will see light and flame walk beside them, and you will not laugh then. His words sank into the night like stones into deep water. The fire burned low, its glow painting the scarred warrior's face with gold and ash. The young ones did not move. They sat in silence, their hearts heavy, their thoughts twisted with fear. The old hero leaned back, his eyes returning to the flames. His voice fell softer now, but it carried across the circle like a blade across stone. That was the first time I learned to fear humans, not for their weapons, not for their numbers, but for the things that walk beside them when they believe. The night closed around the camp. No one spoke, no one dared, and though the fire still burned, every soldier felt a chill seep into their bones. The campfire had burned down to glowing embers, yet no one moved to add wood. The younger soldiers sat frozen, their faces pale in the dim light. They had begun the night mocking humans, their voices full of arrogance. Now their mouths were dry, their laughter gone, and their eyes fixed on the old hero, as if chained by his words. The silence pressed down heavier than armor. The hero leaned forward, the firelight drawing deep lines across his scarred face. His voice came again, low and sharp, like the edge of a blade dragged slowly across stone. "You want to know the cost of arrogance," he said, "then listen, for it was arrogance that destroyed us, not human weapons, not their armies. Our pride killed us long before their bullets touched our skin." He paused, his eyes reflecting the faint orange glow of the dying fire. His hands tightened into fists, knuckles pale against old scars. "I commanded warriors who thought themselves invincible," he said. "We had crushed worlds, burned civilizations, broken entire species beneath our boots. We believed Earth would fall just as is. We laughed at their myths, the way you laugh. We told ourselves their belief was foolish, their stories weak. And because of that, we walked into a trap we could not see. Not a trap of steel or fire, a trap of spirit." The young ones stirred, but no one interrupted. Their arrogance had been stripped away, piece by piece. The hero's voice grew heavier, pressing into their ears. "I remember one of my strongest captains. His name was He was taller than most, a killer without fear. On the second day of battle, I found him shaking like a child, his weapon dropped, his mouth whispering human names. He swore he saw fire walking beside their soldiers, wings spreading above their lines. He told me he heard the roar of a lion, though none were near. When I ordered him to rise, he screamed at me, screamed that the myths were real, that the humans were not alone. He fled into the night and never returned." The embers hissed softly, as if echoing the memory. The hero closed his eyes briefly. "One by one, my warriors fell apart. Some went mad, some ran, some threw themselves into human fire rather than face the shadows they believed were hunting them. And all the while, the humans stood. They bled, they broke, but they did not stop. Their belief carried them forward. Every death seemed to strengthen them. Every cry of their myths made the air heavier, as if unseen armies marched beside them." He opened his eyes again, cold and steady. "We were not defeated by numbers. We outnumbered them. We were not defeated by weapons. Ours were stronger. We were defeated by arrogance. We thought belief was weakness. We learned too late it was their greatest weapon." A shudder passed through the circle. One young soldier whispered, his voice trembling, "But how? How can stories destroy warriors?" The hero's gaze turned on him, sharp and merciless. "Because stories live in the heart, and the heart is what decides battles. My soldiers carried pride, but humans carried fire. Pride breaks when struck, fire spreads." He let the words hang in the air, heavy as stone. "Do you know what it feels like," he continued, "to watch your battalion dissolve before your eyes? To see warriors you trusted, warriors who swore never to break, fall to their knees before a whisper of myth? I saw it. I led them into war, and I led them into ruin. The cost of arrogance was their lives. Hundreds of them, scattered across the burning city, left to die while humans raised their banners over the smoke." His voice grew softer, but the weight of it only deepened. "I returned alone. My scars are not only on my body, they are carved into my soul. I see their faces when I close my eyes. And still I hear the humans shouting their names, calling their myths, raising their dead gods on the battlefield. It was not victory by force. It was victory by spirit, and spirit is something no blade can kill." The younger soldiers sat in silence, their throats dry, their hearts pounding. Their arrogance was gone. What replaced it was something new: fear, respect, and a creeping unease they could not shake. The hero leaned back slowly, his eyes never leaving the embers. "So when you laugh at human myths," he said, his voice almost a whisper now, remember the warriors who fled, remember the battalion that crumbled. They laughed once, just as you did. Their laughter died on the battlefield. The fire cracked, a single spark leaping upward before fading into the dark sky. The sound was sharp, final. No one spoke. No one dared. The war hero closed his eyes. For a moment it seemed he might not speak again. But then his lips moved, his words soft yet clear. Humans are dangerous not because of their weapons, not because of their flesh. They are dangerous because they believe. And belief can move mountains. Belief can raise shadows. Belief can kill. The silence that followed was absolute. The young soldiers stared into the embers, their own reflections flickering back at them, twisted and fragile. They had begun the night with laughter. Now all they carried was the weight of truth. And though the campfire still glowed, every one of them felt colder than the night around them. The night had grown deep, the stars sharp against the black sky. The fire was no longer a blaze but a bed of red embers, glowing faintly, breathing like a tired beast. Around it, the young soldiers sat silent, their eyes lowered, their laughter gone. They had begun the night mocking human myths. Now their hearts were heavy, weighed down by the stories of the scarred war hero sitting before them. He had spoken of battles, lost not to steel or fire but to belief. He had shown them scars not only on his body but on his spirit. And still, he was not done. His voice, when it came again, was low and steady. Yet it cut through the stillness like the pull of a blade through cloth. You ask if I saw gods, he said. You ask if I saw demons. You ask if I believe humans' myths are real. I will not give you comfort. I will give you truth. The soldiers raised their eyes, their faces pale in the glow of the embers. They leaned in, unwilling yet unable to stop themselves from hearing what would come next. The hero's gaze swept across them, his eyes dark, his scars sharp in the dying light. What I saw on that battlefield was not illusion. It was not smoke or fire alone. It was something more, something that lived in the humans, something that rose out of them like breath from their lungs. It did not matter if their gods were real. Their belief made them real, and that was enough. He shifted, the armor on his shoulder groaning softly, his eyes fixed on the embers, as though he saw the battlefield inside them. I have seen soldiers crushed by tanks, burned by fire, torn apart by steel, but I have never seen soldiers stand when their world was falling apart except humans. I saw them fight with broken bones. I saw them rise, with blood pouring from their chests. They fought not for survival, but for something greater, for the myths you laugh at. And in that moment, those myths were alive. The youngest of the soldiers whispered, "But myths are only stories." The war hero's head turned sharply, his gaze pinning the boy where he sat. "Stories are the foundation of worlds," he said. "Stories shape minds. Stories bind hearts together. Do you think humans fight alone? No. When they fight, they carry every story ever told, every hero ever remembered, every god ever worshipped, and they bring it all to the battlefield. That is why their eyes burn brighter than their weapons. That is why their will is stronger than their flesh." He leaned closer to the fire, the glow cutting across his face, deepening the shadows in his scars. His voice dropped, heavy, sharp. "You must understand this. When you face humans, you face not one soldier. You face thousands. You face their ancestors, their heroes, their gods. You face the weight of their belief. And belief is heavier than any blade." The circle had gone completely still. Even the night seemed to hold back its breath. The young ones shivered, not from the cold, but from the force of his words pressing against their minds. One soldier swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "And you, old hero, do you believe in their myths now?" The scarred warrior's eyes narrowed. For a long moment, he said nothing, and the silence grew so heavy it felt like chains around their necks. Then his lips moved, and his voice was soft but unshaken. "I believe in the power of belief. I believe that when humans call their gods, they are not alone. Whether spirit or shadow, whether truth or illusion, something answers, and that something is enough to kill us." His words struck like hammers. The soldiers sat pale and still, their pride burned away, their arrogance crushed, their minds turned inward, picturing themselves on a battlefield with humans, facing not only men and women but the weight of legends, the roar of gods, the shadow of demons. Their hands twitched at their sides, restless, uneasy. The hero leaned back slowly, his gaze lifting to the stars above. "Do not mistake me," he said. "I do not kneel to their gods. I do not worship their myths. But I respect them, because I have seen what happens when they are called upon, and I will never laugh at them again." The night deepened. The wind moved softly across the camp, stirring ash into the air. The soldiers looked at their hero, their eyes wide, their voices trapped in their throats. None dared speak. None dared laugh. The war hero's eyes remained on the stars, distant, unreadable. His voice, when it came again, was like the whisper of steel drawn from its sheath. "You are young. You have not faced them yet. But when you do, remember this night. Remember my words. Do not laugh when humans cry out their myths, for, if you laugh, your laughter will be the last sound you make. The fire cracked, a single ember breaking free and fading into the dark. The silence that followed was complete, deep, endless. The younger soldiers sat motionless, their thoughts tangled with fear and awe. The old hero did not look at them again. His gaze stayed on the stars, as though the truth he carried belonged not to this world but to something greater. And though the fire still glowed faintly, the camp felt colder than ever before. The fire was almost gone now. Only a few glowing coals pulsed faintly in the ashes, breathing like the last heartbeat of a dying beast. The young soldiers sat in silence, stiff as stone, their eyes fixed on the old war hero. They had come into the night laughing, their voices loud, mocking human myths. Now their throats were dry, their bodies heavy, their laughter buried beneath the weight of his words. The scarred hero sat still, his gaze lifted to the endless stars above. The cold light of the heavens touched his face, and in that light, his scars looked older, deeper, carved not only by battle but by truth. He had given them his story. He had given them his pain. Yet there was one final thing he had not spoken, one truth he held back until now. When he finally lowered his eyes to meet theirs, the silence broke like glass. His voice was soft but sharp, carrying through the night with a weight none could escape. "You ask if I believe their gods walk with them," he said. "You ask if their myths are real. But that is the wrong question. The right question is this: do you want to stand before humans long enough to find out?" A shiver ran through the circle. The younger ones shifted uneasily, their faces pale in the dying glow of the fire. The boldest among them, who had laughed the loudest at the start of the night, now whispered, his voice trembling, "Are they truly so dangerous, even to us?" The hero leaned forward, his eyes dark and steady, like the weight of a storm pressing against the earth. "Yes," he said, "humans are fragile in flesh, but unbroken in spirit. You strike one down, and two more rise. You crush their body, and still they fight with their belief. I have seen warriors of our kind stronger, faster, sharper fall before them, not because humans were better, but because they refused to stop. And when they call upon their myths, they fight with more than themselves. They fight with every name ever spoken, every hero ever remembered, every god ever whispered. They fight with ghosts." The soldiers froze. The night air seemed colder, the silence deeper. The weight of his words pressed on their chests, making it hard to breathe. The hero's voice grew heavier, sharper. "You laugh at them now, but if you face them, you will not laugh. You will feel the ground tremble. You will hear whispers in the smoke. You will see shapes move in the firelight. And when you do, your pride will shatter. Your heart will falter, and you will understand too late why I do not laugh." He rose slowly to his feet, the old armor groaning with emotion. His shadow stretched long and dark across the camp, cast by the faint glow of the embers. The soldiers looked up at him, their eyes wide, their bodies rigid. He seemed larger now, not only a warrior but something more, a figure carved from truth itself. His voice rolled over them, deep and final. "So here is my warning. When you face humans, remember this night. Remember my scars. Remember the silence that followed your laughter. Do not mock their myths. Do not dismiss their stories. For, if you do, those same stories will be the last thing you hear before your blood stains the earth." The wind stirred, carrying ash into the sky, scattering it like dust of forgotten bones. The soldiers sat frozen, every word of his warning burned into their minds. None of them spoke, none of them dared. The hero turned, his back to the fire, his shadow long before him. He walked away slowly, each step heavy but certain, his figure fading into the darkness beyond the camp. For a long time the soldiers listened to the sound of his footsteps, fading further and further, until silence swallowed him whole. Still, none moved. The embers glowed faintly, casting only the smallest light. The young ones stared into the ashes, each seeing something differentiators, ghosts, wings of fire, eyes burning in the dark. Their pride was gone. Their laughter was gone. What remained was fear. One soldier finally whispered, his voice shaking like dry leaves, "Do you think he is right? Do you think the humans' myths truly live?" No one answered. No one could. The silence stretched until the night itself seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting. Each soldier's thoughts turned inward, to the battles they might one day fight, to the humans they might one day face. And though none would admit it, every one of them felt the same chill creeping through their bones. The old hero had left them with a warning, a truth heavier than steel. And as they sat in the darkness, staring at the dying fire, they knew one thing for certain: they would never laugh at human myths again. The night closed around the camp, thick and endless. The fire gave its final breath, a faint glow, a soft hiss. Then it was gone. Only the stars remained, watching in silence, as if they too carried the weight of stories whispered since the beginning of time.